So after playing a bunch of the final shape and messing around with builds, I got a little curious about the brand new hunter aspect, Ascension. Yeah, the one that turns you into a helicopter. The aspect on the surface feels very weak, but then I got curious a little more, and I paired it with the new hunter exotic, Gifted Conviction. This allows us to drop jolting bombs all around us, and also has some pretty beefy damage reduction. And to tell you the truth, it's way better than I expected. So I am here to showcase the exotic and 2 builds that you can use to take advantage of the exotic to its fullest. But before we go into the video, it wouldn't be right without giving it a title, a build title, as we always do. So allow me to introduce the Heli Jolter Hunter build. So let's first look at the Gifted Conviction exotic, and it says activating Ascension or Tempest Strike throws bouncing explosives at nearby targets that jolts them and damages them. Jolting nearby targets grants you damage resistance. This goes all the way up to ×4, and I believe this is something like a 35 to 40% damage resistance, which is pretty incredible. The original aspect actually says when you use your class ability while airborne, it creates a burst of energy, and then it amplifies you and it jolts nearby targets. So this is how the actual Ascension works with Gifted Conviction. You'll jump up in the air, you'll press your airborne attack button, you can see it jolts a whole bunch of enemies around you. It makes you amplified, and you can see I have ×3 resist on the left hand side of my screen. That is how the main loop of it is. Once you get it back, you can do it again and pop out some more of these bombs, and as you can see, chains keeps going, and then as long as I'm getting ionic traces back, I am able to then use it again. And that's going to be the core loop of what you'll be doing with your class ability. So right off the bat, you're going to get a 25 to 50% damage reduction whenever you jolt a whole bunch of enemies. Combine that with one of the class fragments from the Arc subclass and also Prismatic, one being the Facet of Protection, which gives you a 15%, and there's also a similar one which is basically the same image but it's on Arc that gives you a 25% damage reduction. So you've already got 50% right there. Then if you throw on the seasonal mod for this season, Galvanic Armor, when you're amplified, you also will get damage reduction as well. And this is another 35%. So you already have upwards of 80% damage reduction. And if you have your 100% resilience as well, you're going to be able to tank quite a lot of damage. Before we jump into the builds though, I do want to explain one little caveat that this build has. It's a very aggressive playstyle, so it means you need to be up in the face of a lot of enemies. So it means when you go into harder content and you can get one shot easily, or you don't have your resistances stacked, you will end up getting killed, which happens quite a lot, especially when you run a Master Nightfall like you're seeing in the footage, where it has attrition. So you have to be careful about getting the health wells, but usually you should be fine. But as you can see from the footage, it's doing pretty well in a Master Nightfall, and later on in the video you'll get to see it in one of the Master Lost sectors. It's a really fun exotic and I like the elements of it. Let's talk about how you can maximize that with 2 builds. The first of these is going to be on Arc, purely because it has the most synergy that you can use, being that it is an Arc ability that you're using and also having Jolt. The great thing about this is that Ascension gets amplified even more when we're using the exotic, but we're going to be combining it with flow state. So defeating a jolted target makes you amplified. While you're amplified, you're going to be able to get your dodge back quicker, which we need for the loop of the build to work. And also, you'll be able to come amplified whenever you kill jolted targets. You could go for something else here, but I do recommend that you go with flow state. Potentially, Tempest Strike could be something that you could add in and do like a double version of this, which would be pretty cool. But I like this setup here. As for your grenades, you can go with a pulse grenade or with a flashbang grenade, so you can blind and also jolt targets, because we are going to be using Spark of Shock, which allows us to jolt grenades, with our grenades I should say. And we're using Gambler's Dodge because you can also take advantage of Combination Blow in this build. You don't have to, but it also can give you more melee damage output and also give you some health whenever you need it if you can keep this active as well. You can go with Gathering Storm, or you can go with Storm's Edge if you want a whole bunch of fun. I like Gathering Storm just because it puts out more damage, and especially if I'm running in champion content, I can just stick it in the ground and it will keep jolting things for me. For the fragments, this is the one fragment I was talking about, which is Spark of Resistance. This is going to give you a 25% damage reduction when you are surrounded by 3 combatants, which is going to be what you're doing all the time with the amount of adds that there are in certain encounters. We're also going to be going with Spark of Ions, which defeating a jolted target creates ionic traces, which will come back to you and give you things for your abilities, which is great. We also have Spark of Beacons here, which is while you are amplified, your special, arc special, or heavy ammo weapon will blind enemies. You can also swap this out if you want to for Spark of Amplitude if you run lower end content, and you can just create orbs for days while we're amplified, which I think is going to be quite good. This is good because of the weapons that we're going to be using in the build. And then finally, we have Spark of Shock to take advantage of having Jolt on our name. For our mods on the build, we're going to be very quick here, but I have double harmonic siphon because we are going to be using arc weapons here. This is going to make any arc weapon kills that we get give us a bunch of orbs alongside a heavy ammo finder or a special weapon ammo finder. It's entirely up to you. We have double bolstering detonation, which is going to give us class ability energy when we ever cause damage with our grenade. And then I have heavy handed on here. You can swap this out and go with firepower if you want as well. It's a personal preference of what you want to do. I have 2 arc resistances because of what I was running, but you can swap these out for other resistances for whatever the encounter that you're doing. And we have 1 charged up. We also have stacks on stacks, which allows us to gain more stacks whenever we pick up an armor charge, which is quite good. And then Absolution, which reduces all ability cooldowns each time we pick up an orb of power. This is great purely because we're going to be generating so many orbs. And finally, we are doubling up with utility kickstart so we can get our class ability back a lot quicker, which is going to be the core component of the build alongside distribution. I would highly recommend that you have as much mobility as you can alongside as much resilience as you can. Even 100 resilience is going to be key here. For artifact mods, all of the other ones are going to be kind of a little bit irrelevant, more so for the prismatic build that we're doing, but you want counter energy because it's going to give you your ability energy back whenever you stun a champion. You'll be doing that quite a lot. Also, if you have elemental siphon, you're going to be able to make more ionic traces, which is key. And then lastly, we have galvanic armor, which is going to reduce, obviously, give us that extra 35% whenever we are amplified. Really good. So finally, for this setup, we are going to be running the main weapon, which is Indebted Kindness, or any weapon that you can get that has Volt Shot on it, because it then leads into jolting targets, which feeds into the loop of the build, which is really fun, and I love this setup. So let's jump into the second of the builds before we talk about it overall. For the prismatic side of things, we're still going with Ascension, but we have Starless Execution now, which is going to allow us to become invisible a hell of a lot more often because we're going to be jolting targets, which is fantastic. We're also running a grapple grenade so we can get extra tangles and explosions with our setup of weapons. And then combination blow once again to take advantage of it, once again feeding into the loop of Gambler's Dodge. And we are running Tether here. You can run Storm's Edge, but Tether is going to be good for more endgame stuff because you're going to be able to lock down enemies and have that weaken on all the time. In our fragment slots, we'll rapid fire these. This Facet Protection will give you a 15% damage buff. Not too sure, no, damage reduction, I should say, not damage buff. While you're Transcendent, it's increased. I'm not too sure what the number is there, but we need to have Facet of Hope to be able to get our class ability back. We're also going to have Facet of Purpose to give us an overshield in this instance. We're also going to be going with Facet of Balance because rapidly defeating targets with light damage gives us melee, and then Dark gives us a grenade energy. Once again, you can swap this out, maybe even go Facet of Bravery and get yourself Unraveling rounds. This is kind of an optional one. And then Facet of Courage. This is also going to be good because your arc abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with the darkness debuff. But once again, you can swap these two out and go for what you want. As for mods, the same setup is here. We have a dual harmonic siphon, and then all of the mods are pretty much the same. We still have the finders, we still have the resistances, we still have charged up, stacks on stacks, and then the utility kickstart. The only thing that really changes here is on our artifact, which we want Void Hegemony, radiant orbs, and then also galvanic armor and threaded blast. And then lastly, for our weapon setup, we're running the call with demo to get our grenade back. We're running graviton lance because it's going to give us a whole bunch of bursts whenever we kill an enemy, and then a heavy that you want. Let's talk about the overall of the actual exotic and the builds and how strong they are, because I have some thoughts and they're actually quite good. 100% the arc version of this build is way better than the prismatic one. You can change the weapon setup and maybe the mod setup around a little bit, but I actually think that it's quite strong in the hands of an aggressive player that knows how to keep their abilities up and stun the right champions and keep the loop of Ascension going. As you can see from the footage in front of us, we are in a Master Loss sector, and I'm using the arc setup of the build. When you go up against overloads, this absolutely trounces them. So I had Indebted Kindness, I think I had Thunderlord as well, and also a Blast Furnace as I swapped the weapons around, but I still had Indebted Kindness for that jolting. And this can actually cover all of the champions in the game if you've got the right weapon setup, and having that extra jolt, having the ability to continually do a bit of damage and chain things together with enemies. A lot of times you just have the champions left to kill, and it also quite locks down the overload champions that disappear all the time, which can be quite frustrating. And yeah, you'll be surprised how quick you get your class ability back and how quickly you're able to spam this out. And I really enjoyed messing around with this, and I actually got a really good roll with the armor stats that I have, and I can't wait to utilize this and see how it fares in GMs this season. So let me know if you want to check out this exotic. If you have, are you enjoying it? And as always, if this video has been helpful and informative, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and check out the link in the description to my Discord where you can find all of the builds that I've created on the channel. And if you want to suggest some in there as well that I can try out, I'll be more than happy to. But as always, this has been Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.